Good morning and welcome to All About Animals. I'm Sherry Graditor, and this is an unusual program for me because I am my own guest. We have no one else here today. Traditionally, once a year in the spring, I take the camera for myself because things are happening in our woods, in our yards, in our neighborhoods that affect us. And oftentimes we don't know how to respond to them. And I'm talking about that which happens in spring, which is the birth of baby animals. And how we wind up oftentimes interacting with them. And if you don't know what you're doing, it's so easy. Through kindness and the wish to do well, it's so easy to do harm. That it's nice to take a look, a little talk about what's going on outside and what is appropriate to do. And I think probably we'll start with birds because it's the baby birds you're going to see first. A lot of times people see birds on the ground and they're little and they're cute and they're obviously babies and they're hopping around. And we think, oh my God, this baby bird, poor thing, fell out of its nest. I'm going to take it in. I'm going to find someone to raise it. And in fact, that baby bird belongs on the ground. The way to determine with birds basically is if they're fledged or not fledged. In other words, if they have feathers. If you find a little bird on the ground and its feathers aren't completely grown in, that bird has most likely fallen out of its nest. And if you can find the nest, and oftentimes what you'll see is the parents hovering and fluttering and being hysterical because their child has left the nest too early. If you can put that bird back in the nest, there is a fallacy that says, if I've touched a baby bird, the mother will reject it. And if I put it back in the nest, maybe she'll reject all of the babies. And that simply is not true. If you find a bird that's fallen out of the nest and that bird is not yet fledged, doesn't have its feathers yet, and you can find the nest, and you replace that bird in the nest, the mother will be eternally grateful and she will continue to take care of her baby. Alternately, if you see a bird on the ground and it's hopping around and it has feathers, the chances are that mama has pushed it out of the nest and she's teaching it to fly. And if you climb up, and I've done it, I'm ashamed to say this, but I have. If you climb up and put that bird back in the nest because you think poor thing fell out, in my experience, it was a barn swallow. And I got a ladder and I climbed up and I put that little baby barn swallow right back in the nest. And along came mom and she gave me a look like, do I have to do this again? And she pushed him right back out of the nest. Because there comes a time in the life of a baby bird where mom sends him off to the ground. The parents will care for the bird on the ground, make sure that that bird is fed, and they'll teach it to fly and take care of itself. So at that point, if you find an unfledged bird, you're intervening to the benefit of the bird. If you start with a bird that's already got feathers, then you're interfering with mom and dad teaching him to be a bird. So that really is the bird issue. And it's gone as far as I remember someone finding several larger birds. I believe they were owls, which had come out of a tree that had been chopped down, and they were in a hollow in the tree. And they took a bushel basket and they wedged it in a tree branch and put the owlets back, and the parents cared for them until they were ready to fly. So don't walk away thinking that mom and dad are going to reject them. They will not. Go from that to another one that most of us who live in the suburbs, in rural areas, and oftentimes in urban areas deal with, and that's coyotes. In the spring, coyotes have pups. The adults are out hunting. Generally, if you come upon a coyote and you're out, and they're not as shy and terrified as they used to be, they've pretty much learned, opportunistic as they are, to live among people because we've moved into their territory. But if you clap your hands and stomp your feet and yell and raise a joyous noise, they will look at you and they say, oh my goodness, and they will leave. If a mother coyote is protecting a den, she's not leaving. Mother and father coyote will be more aggressive while they're protecting their young, and they will be more active in their hunting. So spring is a good time to be sure, although all year is a good time to be sure, that your cats, your small dogs, do not go out unsupervised. It's an invitation to disaster if you do it. And if you live anywhere where coyotes are, and they are everywhere, then as a responsible pet owner, it is on you to see that when you walk a small dog, or if you have a cat, that they shouldn't be out, because they're vulnerable to hunting animals, and that can be foxes, but it can also be coyotes. And especially in the spring, when foxes have kits and when coyotes have pups, you're dealing with much more aggression than normal. The third, and probably the most important of all of the animals that you're going to bump into as babies, and let me take a quick aside to possums, because possums are the only North American marsupial. They carry their babies in a pouch. Their babies are born about the size of my thumbnail and naked. The babies then crawl up the mother and into the pouch. The mother has, I believe, 12 nipples. I'm not quite sure. If there are more babies than that, they just don't make it. Each one attaches to a nipple and stays attached to that nipple in mother's pouch until they're viable on the outside. But sometimes if you come upon a coyote, if you come upon a possum that's been hit by a car and it's late spring into early summer, she may be dead. Her babies may still be alive in her pouch. And if you're not concerned about doing it, you can check. And if you are, unless it's an old death and then you know the babies are gone, if you can get your hands on a rehabber, you're doing really well, and see if there are babies that are viable in that pouch. And lastly, and most important of all, are deer. When mama deer has a fawn, she plants that fawn under a bush in a weedy patch, and she leaves that fawn. She tells the fawn not to move, and fawns are much more well-behaved than our children. And when she tells that fawn is not to move, that fawn's not going to go anywhere, and it will lay there. Little baby newborn fawns are smaller than Shuri. They're only about yay big. They're very cute. And they lay there, and sometimes when we're walking, we come upon a fawn in the woods, and there's no mother. And we think, Mom's not here, something must have happened to her. And we come back an hour later, and that fawn is still laying there all alone. Mom's still not here, that something's wrong. And we come back 2 or 3 hours later, and the fawn is still laying in exactly the same place, and there is no mother in sight. And out of kindness, loving kindness, we say, oh my God, Mom must have been hit by a car. Something terrible must have happened. And we take that fawn and we take it home. And we have just kidnapped Mama's baby. Deer who produce a fawn, the deer have a body odor that predators will chase. Fawns have no body odor. The predators will not find them by scent. And so Mama, who they can follow by scent, stays away from her baby all day, comes back to feed, and goes away. And she doesn't stay with that little tiny vulnerable fawn that can't get up and run if it's being chased by a predator. She stays as far away from it as she can. She's not abandoned it. So if you see a fawn in the woods, and that fawn is laying quiet, he's not hungry, he's not frightened, he's been told by his mother to stay there, and he's being a good boy or girl. If you come back an hour or two later and that fawn is still there, the fawn is doing exactly what it has been told to do. If the fawn is showing evidence of distress, that means bleeding or crying. Bleat, B-L-E-A-T, not bleed. Bleating or crying. Getting up, walking around, staggering around. If the fawn looks like it's in trouble, that's the time to get on the phone, call your local animal warden, or call your animal shelter because they've got lists. Get the name of a licensed Illinois rehabber who is permitted to rehabilitate deer. Call that person. Talk to them. Ask them if it's time to intervene. Don't ever take that. Don't kidnap the baby from its mama. Mama will come back to feed her baby. She'll be full of milk. She'll be ready to feed. And that baby that she left there, in all good faith that it will still be there, is gone. And she can't even follow it because you've carried it. Now, one more little thing on that, which is that if you touch that fawn, or your dog is running through the woods and touches that fawn, does not mean that mama's going to abandon that fawn. Mama will still take care of her baby. They are incredible. If you watch all of the animals that live in our backyards, from the birds to birds that mate for life, and you see them with their young, till you'll see the foxes out with the little kits running behind them, the raccoons with their babies, the possums carrying the babies on their backs, which is just the cutest thing you've ever seen, the deer, as the fawn become more mobile, staying with them. You realize how wonderful and beautiful this world is, and how creatures in the wild have a tremendous amount of humanity, and they love their babies. Don't, in the name of your own humanity, take them away from their mothers. And if there's a question, please, any shelter has a list of rehabbers. Most rehabbers are happy to talk to you, and they will tell you, and they will explain, and they will help you figure out when it's time to intervene, when it's not. So unless it's an animal that's in the middle of a road and needs to be moved, check with someone who specializes and who's trained before you intervene. And in the meantime, just take a step back. Watch the beauty of the babies and their mothers. Watch this world come alive in the spring. The miracle that is spring in the Midwest, where we have such rich wildlife to watch, is spectacular. Watch it, love it, enjoy it. Don't destroy it. We're now going to Save a Pet, and we'll show you some of the animals available there for adoption.